In Syria, the Assad regime has fallen. Hafez al-Assad took power in 1971 and ruled Syria with an iron fist. Then, his son Bashar took over and survived a decades-long civil war, in part by using poison gas and barrel bombs to kill thousands of his own citizens. Just 11 days ago, he controlled pieces of a failed state. Then suddenly, rebels launched a surprise attack in Aleppo. A few days later, they took Hama, then Homs. Then late Saturday as they closed in on the capital Damascus, Assad fled. It's a historic moment. Syrians have endured decades of oppression under Assad, and millions have lived abroad in poverty as refugees. But Syria is still in jeopardy. So how did the Assad regime collapse so quickly? And what comes next? Upbeat dramatic music. Announcer, Shah neighborhood of Aleppo. Under heavy government fire. Narrator, the Syrian civil war has raged since protesters rose up against Assad in 2011. But by 2020 it had become a so-called frozen conflict. 5 main groups had emerged, but fighting between them had died down. A coalition of anti-government rebels controlled a pocket of territory in the north and parts of the south. Above them, militias backed by Turkey. And to the east, Kurdish-led militias. In the southeast, remnants of the terrorist group ISIS remained. But otherwise Assad's government controlled the rest. At least in name. In reality, he was completely reliant on 2 allies. At the height of the civil war, Iran had directed several militias to fight for Assad. The most powerful Hezbollah remained in Syria to protect him. Russia helped too by conducting airstrikes on the rebels and maintaining several military bases. Assad did have an army, but let it grow corrupt and weak. Without Iran and Russia, he had little to keep him in power. And in 2023, an event would start a chain reaction that would lead to his downfall. On October 7th, an Iranian-backed militia, Hamas, attacked Israel. Israel responded not only against Hamas, but also against Iranian-backed militias in Syria, Hezbollah, and even Iran itself, weakening the whole network. They could no longer protect Assad. And Russia was distracted too, having committed most of its military to its invasion of Ukraine. This gave the rebels in Syria an opportunity to test Assad's forces in Aleppo. Crowd cheering. Announcer, celebrating their victory. Rebel fighters are in the streets of Aleppo. Announcer, the Syrian government clearly abandoned both weapons and ammunition in a hurry. Announcer, on the move at pace. Announcer, frightening advance poses. The biggest challenge to President Assad in many years. Narrator, as rebels race towards Damascus. Neither Russia nor Iran were eager to get involved. Assad was on his own and his troops knew it. Here are some of them reportedly changing out of their military uniforms and fleeing. As his army melted away, Assad went to the airport, where he and his family boarded a plane and fled to Moscow, ending one of the most oppressive regimes in the world. Now, several different groups want to replace him. So when this story broke, obviously there was a deluge of news, and it was quite a challenge trying to separate the noise. Luckily, I was able to stay organized for this story, thanks to my Ground News subscription. Ground News is a website and an app that gathers news from all over the world and puts it in one place. It then gives me a clear way to navigate how every story is being told. Like this story about the collapse of the Assad regime. Because of today's sponsored Ground News, I'm able to see that almost 1,000 news outlets reported on the story. with nearly even reporting across the political spectrum. I could then filter the news outlets I wanted to read by political bias, recency, location, even government affiliation. In this case, I was really interested to see stories rated with a very high factuality. Ground News even uses these same tags for each story and headline so that you have all the details on hand. I also love this interactive map feature that lets me explore news from all over the world. Ground News has become my first stop during breaking news. And I know if you're a fan of Search Party, this is the kind of thing you're looking for. So we've sponsored with Ground News to offer you 50% off their Vantage plan at the link Ground News/Search Party. You can find more info in the description or by scanning this QR code. This is the biggest discount they've ever offered. So I really recommend you giving Ground News a shot right now. It's great for anyone who wants a more clear understanding of what's happening in the world. Search Party and Ground News share the same mission. That's to make this news more transparent, more understandable. Thanks again to Ground News for supporting our work. I'll get you back to the story now. Wind blowing. This is Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, arriving in Damascus on Sunday. He leads Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham, the rebel group that led the uprising, and who are in the best position to take power. The biggest question is, who are they? When Syria's civil war started, Jolani helped form a group called Jabhat al-Nusra. They were Islamist extremists who aimed to turn Syria into an Islamist caliphate. Jolani initially allied with other extremist groups, al-Qaeda and its ally ISIS. Then in 2016, he formed a new group, which he claimed was not connected to al-Qaeda. A year later, he merged with other allegedly moderate groups to form HTS. Today, it calls itself an independent entity that follows no organization or party, al-Qaeda or others. But the US regards it as a foreign terrorist organization that maintains contact with al-Qaeda leadership. A week ago, CNN asked Jolani in this interview what his group stood for. What is HTS right now? Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham is one of the factions in the region. Now we're talking about a larger project. We're talking about building Syria. No one has the right to erase another group. There must be legal framework that protects and ensures the rights of all. Narrator, he said publicly. He wants to protect Syria's minorities, like Christians and Kurds. But even if Jolani controls the capital, he'll have a hard time controlling the whole country. Soldiers speaking in Arabic. Soldiers cheering. Narrator, in the north, a coalition of rebel groups, called the Syrian National Army, have different ideologies. Some are aligned with Turkey's government, while others still want to establish an Islamic state, governed by Sharia law. Additionally, the Kurdish-led groups in the north won't want to give up their autonomy. The Kurds are an ethnic